Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Congrats to all you Packer fans out there after Green Bay beat Chicago 28-19. Too bad beating the Bears is like winning the smallest dick contest. But I guess it was a win. Dave Carney.
Wow. Beating the Bears is different than that. The Bears and the Packers, Chad, were tied for the most wins in regular season NFL history. The Green Bay Packers now own the Bears and that particular record. Jesus Christ, like the smallest dick contest. You know, just because the Bears have lost 6 games in a row and we're up in the third and fourth quarter and lose 28-19 doesn't mean it's not a quality win for the Green Bay Packers. That's a quality win for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers
have one win against a 500 team. One.
And that was the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Who, according to ESPN stats and analytics, Chad, now have, this is the Dallas Cowboys. According to ESPN stats and analytics, they have the highest percentage chance to win the Super Bowl now. Isn't that not the biggest bunch of bullshit that you have ever heard? Like the Dallas Cowboys, if you watched their game at all yesterday, and I only watched a little bit of it versus the Colts, they were lucky to beat the Colts. Conversely, you had the Eagles completely upset my little 2-team 6-point teaser by blowing the doors off the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys are not going to be a Super Bowl team, but that's where we're at right now. The ESPN stats and analytics folks think the Dallas Cowboys have a 50% chance to win this year's Super Bowl. I don't know how it is that they come up with this, except for Dallas has got a top 5 defense and a top 2 scoring offense.
I don't see it either, but, things change, I guess. And
I guess
it's ESPN is the other thing. So
let me ask you this, Chad, because this would be something that I hadn't previously pondered because I never thought he would be able to sniff getting to a Super Bowl without Aaron Charles Rodgers. What if Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys did win the Super Bowl? Again, I am not a Cowboy fan, so I'm not hoping for this at all. But what if they did win the Super Bowl? How would that, do you think, change the narrative about Aaron Rodgers and what kind of quarterback he is? Would we start looking at Mike McCarthy and saying, well, that was the reason for the success because he took a middling Dak Prescott, a 4th-round draft pick, elevated him to a Super Bowl, and took a guy that 23 other NFL teams didn't want on draft day, put him in at quarterback? Would we start to look at that differently? I hadn't thought of this until right now.
I wouldn't, but there's a lot of road to chew up here before we get there. So there's a long way to get, to make that happen. But I the thing is about players, I mean, coaches are important. Don't get me wrong. And coach quarterback combination, obviously we can run down the list, is important, but still the player has to go out and play. And Rodgers' numbers that he's put up over the years are still his numbers.
Yes,
it doesn't really matter who the coach
they are.
Was specifically. But it definitely would be a kind of a thumb of the nose to Packer fans and to Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure Mike McCarthy would love it. And I'm sure that narrative would probably start spinning, but that doesn't necessarily mean it gain any traction. I suppose you could consider it, but I don't think, you don't have to take something away from somebody for somebody to gain something either.
Well, I don't think that you have to do that, but that's not the way that the society that surrounds sports thinks about it, right?
It's
like
not true.
It generally is, if this happens, then this must not have happened, or if this happens, this can't happen. Speaking of things that can and can't happen, you look at Joey Miller chiming in with us here this morning. Joey asking about the San Francisco 49ers, Chad, and Jimmy Garoppolo. You want to talk about the dude with the worst luck in the NFL at quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, and we'll talk a little bit about that this morning. Broke his foot in several places. However, Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, who at Iowa State, Chad, there were a couple of seasons in which Rob Mish, friend of ours from Las Vegas, writes for the Chicago Sun-Times. Rob Mish and I were talking about this guy being perhaps, Brock Purdy, the best quarterback in college football because of his yards per attempt, his completion percentage and touchdown interception ratio, whatever. But the yards per attempt is actually the biggest determiner of quarterback, I wouldn't say greatness, but how good the actual quarterback can be in a system. The yards per attempt in college was one of those stats that Brock Purdy, at least in his sophomore season, led the FBS in. And I watched that game a little bit in replay last night. He looks like he's got some moxie and some swagger. I don't think the 49ers are done, but as Joey asked here, are they in trouble? Probably a little bit. Well,
look at their depth chart. Who do they have behind him? Nobody.
Christian McCaffrey. They just signed Josh, somebody from the Denver Broncos practice squad. Yeah,
exactly. Josh, somebody. Exactly. Yeah. I'm just telling you. Last night, before this just happened, I looked at their depth chart. They have nobody there. So it was Brody, and that's it.
Yes.
So Christian McCaffrey, I would imagine, would be their emergency quarterback.
Ooh, man, can you imagine that?
Right? I mean,
I guess.
You have to have. Usually, there's a team has a quote unquote emergency quarterback, and it's usually some skill player that had some college experience or whatever. And in case the worst happens, well, the worst has happened. So I'm glad that they've signed Josh somebody.
Yeah, Josh somebody who was on it. Listen, this is third stint with the 49ers. I want to say it's Josh Jacobson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think this will be his third stint with the 49ers. But listen, Brock Purdy played pretty darn good in beating the Dolphins yesterday, right? Tua Tagovailoa had only thrown 3 interceptions the entire season. Chad threw 2 of them yesterday, and the San Francisco defense looked really legit. All right, guys and gals, we've got a lot to cover here this morning on the Sports Carnival. We're shaking off the rust over a weekend that was lots of big stuff to run down. The Lakers and the Bucks, Chad, played in an instant NBA Classic on Friday. That game was fucking fantastic. The Packers got a win over the Bears. The Badgers edged out Marquette in overtime. And we've got some more big announcements here on the Sports Carnival. So stick around. We're back in about 60 seconds. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Hello, I am Don Francisco, and I roast and blend coffees for your pleasure and mine. My newest blend is Vanilla Nuts. The coffee so rich and so sweet, it tastes like the French Alps has dangled its in your cup of java. If you love coffee like I do, then you'll love Don Francisco's with a 135-year tradition. Because at Don Francisco's, if you're up all night, so are we.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center Studios, this is the Sports Carnival. Remember, it takes patience to listen. It takes skill to pretend you're listening. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
All right, welcome back, guys and gals. Thanks for being with us here this morning on the Sports Carnival. Want to send a special shout out to our good friends of the program, Kyle Cable and One Trust Real Estate. Chad, Kyle is my real estate agent, and coming up this week, we're going live, listing my house in Stoddard. I'll be making the move into La Crosse, and Kyle's a really knowledgeable real estate expert in this thing full time. That's one of the things, Chad, that you really have to consider when you're going to make a real estate decision of any kind. Is the person that you're working with doing this full time, or is this a side gig because they've also got a job at, let's say, the Recovery Room? Not to say that you can't do both, but in this day and age, you really do need a full-time pro, and that is Kyle Cable. Recovery Room, as mentioned, we're broadcasting live from their Trauma Center studios, coast to coast. Preferred Insurance, downtown La Crosse, Tony Rousa and Brian Sandmeyer. Listen, home insurance, auto insurance, flood insurance, or business insurance, go to the official insurance provider of the Sports Carnival, and that is Preferred Insurance. Of course, our good friends, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi, the Coos, over at Land Home Financial. By the way, Todd was out there with us last week at the Recovery Room Bucks ticket giveaway. The hats that these guys over at Land Home, Midwest Mortgage Team, put together, Chad, like, are actually starting to cause like fashion ripples in the city of La Crosse. Like, I wear one, Todd wears one, you're wearing one. Now, everywhere we go, people are asking, where did you get that hat? It turns out it's from the Midwest Mortgage Team. Again, making fashion ripples right here in the city of La Crosse. Our good buddy, Joe Sampson at Helping Hands Landscaping. If you've got snow removal needs, Chad, I know that you're up there in Washington. He can't get out there to help you. But if you've got snow removal needs, which will be coming sooner than later here in Wisconsin, lawn care, or even dog poop removal, call our buddy Joe. And of course, the official attorney of the Sports Carnival is my buddy Sean O'Neill at the O'Neill Law Firm. Bankruptcy, family law, criminal law. Sean does it all. And he's located on 5th Street, downtown La Crosse. Chad, we got a lot to run down this morning. If I were to ask you this question, how would you answer it? If you had to, and I don't mean you could choose something else, but if you had to watch women's college volleyball or WNBA basketball to both bet on and to watch as a sport, which would you choose?
Oh, volleyball. I can't watch the WNBA. It's so horrible.
Okay. So far, 100% of respondents on the Twitter feed at the Sports Carney have said the very same thing. College volleyball over WNBA basketball. At BetUS, where you sign up and use the promo code Carnival, and you use that promo code when you go to sign up or join, and it'll ask you how you heard about it. Put in the term Carnival there. You can bet on volleyball, Chad, but not college volleyball. We saw some international volleyball, but there is WNBA basketball that you can bet on at BetUS. And listen, we've talked about this from time to time. We did a gig at Jerry's Nugget Casino in Vegas for years. And some of the guys that were in that sports book made a pretty decent clip on WNBA basketball, because like nobody really knows how to accurately cap those things, right? So it just seems that there's some entry points into WNBA basketball you might be able to make some money on.
Bet the under. That's the only thing I can figure. What's the total? 32? Bet the under.
Oh,
what's the total? 26? Bet the under.
Oh,
that's basically what you do on that.
That's fantastic. Speaking of over under tonight, the total for the Bucks and Magic game, which will tip off at 6:00, Chad, is 227 at BetUS. Bucks are currently 9.5-point favorites. If you wanted to lay down a bet on the Bucks money line, you'd have to lay $450 to win $100. So that is minus 450. The Magic are not a good team. The Bucks, as mentioned, Chad, did play an instant classic on Friday versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Anthony Davis, street clothes. Listen, you know, we made a lot of fun of these guys at the beginning of the season because they were awful, 2-10. Anthony Davis is going off right now. Against Milwaukee, he was scintillating. Giannis had a 40-piece. Anthony Davis was even better. 133-129 was the final score of that game. And last night, while the Bucks were idle, they won on Saturday without Giannis, without Middleton, without Drew Holiday versus the Charlotte Hornets. Last night when the Bucks were idle, Anthony Davis put up 55 points and grabbed 17 rebounds in a road win versus the Wizards. Like, this dude is starting to really turn it on. And the Bucks, or the Lakers, over the last 10 games are 8-2. So while we looked at the matchup on Friday and thought, oh man, Bucks are going to roll these cats, I wasn't so sure because the Lakers had been playing surprisingly hot basketball recently. And with Anthony Davis playing the way that he does right now, yeah, the Lakers might be a team that you don't bet against for a while.
I watched that game, and the Bucks missed an ass ton of threes at the end of the game. They could have put them ahead and possibly won that game, including Grayson Allen had a really good look. I think Middleton had a look. There was a couple of guys that had looks to possibly tie it, or I can't remember at that point if it was tie it or put it over or give them a shot to win, and they just couldn't close it, which kind of sucked. But yeah, Anthony Davis is balling. I think his eyebrow had 3 assists, which was
well, I was just going to say it was a very highbrow game for the Los Angeles Lakers versus Washington.
I think that the piece that we made maybe motivated both of them because Westbrook is playing well off the bench, and maybe he's found his spot. I don't know if he'll continue to be off the bench the rest of his career, but right now it's working well for him. And we got to pump the brakes a little bit because they're still sub 500, right? They're 10-12.
10-12.
But,
10-12.
And Anthony Davis usually plays 10 games at a time, and then he'll get hurt somehow.
Yes, generally.
But right now he is absolutely dominating. And if you were to take a snapshot and go, okay, who's MVP right now? He would definitely be in the conversation. Just for a snapshot, obviously.
Yeah. Last 10 games. Season. Last 10 games for sure.
Congrats to him into the Lakers as far as that goes,
Well, it's like we talked about all season. We would bet against the Lakers, fade the Lakers until they gave us a reason not to, right? It wasn't just going to be like right now. It wasn't just a de facto bet against the Lakers. Until they gave you a reason not to bet against them, do it. And now they're starting to give you a reason not to bet against them. If we've got that slide, though, about the weekend recap, I did want to touch on this because the Bucks losing to the Lakers 133-129 on Friday, it didn't mean the week was all lost. Now, Saturday, the back-to-back that the Bucks played in Charlotte against the Hornets, Chad, the Bucks actually sat Giannis, they sat Chris Middleton, sat Drew Holiday, and still got a victory. Bobby Portis had 20 points for Milwaukee. Sorry, this is a little bit smaller this morning. I was having an issue making it bigger because, like Chad said, it was like the Packers beating the Bears and the winner of the smallest dick contest. This turns out to be the smallest picture contest. But needless to say, not all was lost for Milwaukee over the weekend. That was just, listen, it was a great game versus the Lakers on Friday. The Lakers are playing better, but Milwaukee's still one of the best teams in the NBA. And like I've mentioned, tonight at 6:00, the Bucks are in Orlando taking on the Magic. We also saw the Wisconsin Badgers, Chad. I wanted to make sure that we hit on this. because this was a game, the 129th meeting, as a matter of fact, between Marquette, who's out of Milwaukee, and the Badgers out of Madison. This game had everything. Marquette had been playing some really good basketball recently, and Wisconsin, surprisingly, even without Johnny Davis, who is right now in the G League, not really playing for the Wizards in the NBA, but got drafted top 10, even without Johnny Davis, this Bucks team is still finding ways to win. So Chucky Hepburn is now a sophomore. He was the first true, I think, freshman that had started at guard for the Badgers since Devin Harris when he did it last year. Chucky Hepburn had 19 points. Tyler Wall, this kid is just emerging game by game, 15 points. And Jordan Davis, Johnny's twin brother and lacrosse native, had 8 points and 4 rebounds. Didn't shoot exceptionally well, just 3 of 11 from the floor, but played some really tough defense. The other thing that we've got on this particular slide, we've talked about Jimmy G losing himself for the rest of the season with that broken foot. But the other thing I wanted to mention here, Chad, more big giveaways at the recovery room for us here on the Sports Carnival. So go to the recovery room, 7th and Mississippi, order an Alaskan Amber or a New Glarus or a Blue Moon, and you're going to be entered to win one of these incredible prizes. There is a 43-inch TV, Jack Daniels coolers, a Tito's football, which is sweet, a Tito's display bottle, White Claw coolers, and more. We've got things like Jägermeister onesies. There's, let's see, what else did we have? Oh, an Alaskan 162-inch snowboard. This is a board only, but this is something from Alaskan Amber. So again, go to the recovery room any day this week. They're open at 4 o'clock on Mondays now. All right. So 4 o'clock on Mondays. The rest of the week, they'll be open at 11. And get yourself an Alaskan Amber, a Blue Moon, or a New Glarus, and get yourself into the running for these great prizes. Everybody, by the way, that was involved in our Bucks ticket giveaway stays in for this next promotion too. So there is a ton of entries, but of course you can help yourself out by going and getting some beers. That's not a bad way to get yourself in the running for one of those great prizes.
I am not familiar with New Glarus. Love Blue Moon, Alaskan Amber as well, but I don't know what New Glarus is.
New Glarus is not sold in your state. It's a Wisconsin-only beer, and that's why it's probably not familiar to you. It's Spotted Cow. It's the, oh my gosh, there's so many different kinds of beers New Glarus makes, but yeah, that is a Wisconsin-only brewery, so that's why you're not seeing it. Good call.
Well, I am a big fan of Blue Moon, though. That is one of my go-tos when I'm at a bar. I can suck down a few of those bad boys.
Those are good. Let me ask you this though. Do you give any relief now to the Citrus Association of America? Because there was a time in which, Chad, you and I were at a bar called PT's in Vegas, and they kept asking you for fruit. And you asked this bartender, like, did you get propositioned by the Citrus Association of America? Yeah. Like, did you get bought? Because why do you keep trying to put fruit in my beer? Where do you stand on that now?
Normally not a fan of fruit in my beer, but Blue Moon, for whatever reason, is complimented with a nice orange slice.
I agree.
I don't ask for it, though. You know what I'm saying? To me, that seems a little effeminate to ask. Can I have a slice of orange for my beer? It doesn't sound right to me. So if they put it in there, I'll take it, but I don't ask for it. Yeah.
But what if you say, okay, let's just go back to something we talked about last week with Pirate Talk, okay? So if you asked him, I need to fight off scurvy. Will you put an orange in my Blue Moon? Would that change it a little bit for you?
That makes it a little bit more masculine and probably a tad more acceptable in my mind. Not judging anybody else that does that, though. I'm not an anti-fruitite, if you will.
That's awesome. An anti-fruitite, not to be confused with the anti-denti.
Can I bring something up here? Because I don't know if I might have read this incorrectly. Okay, but I think this is legit. Talking about the Bucks, and you and I have been on this guy all year long, Brook Lopez. He is now possibly in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year.
Absolutely.
From an article that I read. He had 7 blocks the other night.
Yes, he did.
I can't get over the fact that here's a guy that didn't start out as a defensive-minded fella, right? He's completely changed his game. He's a 7-footer that's jacking threes and playing awesome defense now. And I think that a lot of people are glossing over the impact of this guy. And as much as Giannis is this team, and there's no doubt about it, guys like Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis and the like are really what make this team great, honestly. Drew Holiday, I mean, you can continue to go down the list, but I just really, I'm going to give, as the kids say nowadays, I want to give Brook Lopez his flowers, if you will.
Yeah. Well, you're not wrong to do so. I think that the game last night, or on Saturday, where he had 7 blocks, was already the 5th game this year where he's had more than 5 blocks in a game.
Brook Lopez dominating.
He is dominating. Now, one thing that Brook Lopez doesn't do that I wish that he did more, and a lot of our audience members know because I've bemoaned this at various times of his tenure with the Bucs, is grab more fucking rebounds. Like, you are that big. You need to beast up on the board. The difference, though, I think the way that the Bucs are playing now, he's not really in as a rebounder. He is a last line of defense stopper. And that block that he had of Anthony Davis on Friday night, by the way, which is one of the reasons I thought the Bucs were going to edge out that game, right? When he blocked Anthony Davis's dunk, I looked at myself because there was nobody there and said, this guy's fucking awesome. Like, he is.
High five yourself?
I kind of did. Little pop right there.
Yeah.
By the way, what's the sound of one hand clapping? It's this. You hear that? That's the sound of one hand clapping.
Wow.
Listen, Brook Lopez deserves all the credit that you just mentioned and probably a little bit more. The defense that Milwaukee plays is one of the better defenses in the NBA when it comes to stopping penetration down the lane, right? Like, you draw them down with Brook, and then you've got Giannis, and it becomes really hard. That's for sure.
Okay. Matt, Matty guys checking in. Happy trails to Graham Mertz. Yeah, he enters the transfer portal, does he not? I mean,
yes,
I saw that.
Yes, he does.
Basketball is better than I expected it would be. 787. Need I say more? The Bucs are the most well-rounded I've ever seen under Coach Bud. I agree with all that. Matt, you nailed all of that.
I agree.
Unfortunately, it hurts that Graham Mertz is leaving.
Ooh.
One of the biggest as far as recruiting, when you look at when they recruited, how highly he recruited, all the. I'm not saying in the moment right now. I'm just saying if you look at it in totality, it kind of hurts a little bit after all the time and energy that was put into that. But hopefully he'll be better off, and the team will end up being better off.
Well, it's surprising this weekend. A couple of things. The Graham Mertz transfer, I was actually a little surprised about, just because I hadn't heard any rumblings or rumors that he was going to look to leave. But when Luke Fickell got hired, we also thought, well, Jim Leonard's got to be out of here, right? Jim Leonard's got to be leaving Wisconsin. Jim Leonard is going nowhere. He is staying right here at Wisconsin to be the defensive coordinator once again. This Wisconsin team, in my estimation, by hiring Luke Fickell and retaining Jim Leonard, they just hit this is a grand slam, not even a home run. This is a grand slam. The other thing is this: Graham Mertz is objectively bad. He's just an objectively bad player. And when you look at where he could go next, I don't know. Somebody mentioned last week, University of Wisconsin at Platteville. Yeah, perhaps, he might go to a D3 school or something like that. I don't know where Graham Mertz would go where he could actually be successful, because he's just not good. He doesn't make reads well. He can't see the defense. He's not terribly accurate. He's got some athleticism, right? He can scramble a bit here, but I watched this guy play 30 times in the last couple of years or whatever it was, 20 times. And he just doesn't process defense well. He just doesn't. Now, not to say that I could do better, but I'm not starting for the Wisconsin Badgers either. It's just one of those players where you're looking at him and like, okay, he's just not very good. So best of luck to Graham Mertz. I'm sure he's a nice kid, good to dogs, loves his parents, but he was not a good quarterback for the Wisconsin Badgers. And I said yesterday, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Matty Ice, or maybe it was actually Kyle Wood, Morning Wood. Good riddance, man. I mean, good riddance. Like, see ya. It's fine.
Yeah, and with a new coach coming in and a new system and new recruits and all those kinds of things, they're going to be fine. They're going to start fresh, and I think ultimately it's probably a good thing and great news for I'm imagining a lot of the players there, and then obviously all the fans, that Jim Leonard's going to stay behind and be the defensive coordinator. I think that's a good move, not only on his part, but obviously on the Badgers' part as well.
I do too, because Jim Leonard, what kind of head coaching opportunities would have really been presented to him at this particular
more time under his belt? Yeah,
I think he does. And it's not like a lot of these great jobs were going to become available. Lane Kiffin hasn't been fired yet at Ole Miss. So when you wait for that one, maybe Jim Leonard goes down and takes that job. We've got a Facebook friend of ours checking in, chat, saying Giannis could get a few more offensive rebounds and follow-up dunks if he took a break from hanging out beyond the three-point line. Leave that to Brook Lopez. Yeah. For the most part, I've got no issues with the way Giannis plays. And as far as the rebounds go, I mean, he had a surprisingly limited amount of rebounds on Friday night comparative to what he normally has. Averages over 11 a game. But, I mean, I see what you're saying. I don't know. In those snapshots, again, we're talking about very, very small snapshots. I can give it to you. But
I like when
no problem.
I like when Giannis steps in about 3 feet from the three-point line and shoots those 17, 18 footers. I like those shots. I think he still needs to just keep the defense honest. I think he still needs to hoist up a few threes. But, yeah, I think he could probably limit that a little bit. He's got a lot of great three-point shooters on his team, and he doesn't necessarily have to do that. I think that's more about just being able to create more space, right?
Yes.
I mean, the great thing about the guy's almost 7 feet tall, and he can take it from one end to the other without ever having to pass the ball. But he doesn't necessarily do that all the time. And then the other thing that's amazing to me, and it still blows my mind, there's a couple of guys that can do this. He can take like 3 steps from half court and make it to the and dunk it. So I mean, the guy, his strides are so amazingly long.
And it's something.
And then his reach, I mean, he's just dominating. And when he finally kind of got that consistent jump shot in there, granted a little bit closer to the goal, I think that he's that much better. Imagine if he could actually get even add 2 or 3 percentage points on his 3-point shot, how dangerous he would be.
Well, indeed. And I think that that's one of the reasons that you mentioned that he actually does it, keeping the defenses honest. And you don't need to be a 3-point hoister specifically, but you do have to be, at least in this day and age, you do have to be a threat enough. If you play the way that Giannis does, right? A threat enough to be able to make some of those plays. Chad, I want to circle back to something that Morningwood propositioned me with last week, and we put it together for a poll question this morning on our Facebook group page, as well as our Twitter feed, which is at the Sports Carney. If you had to pick one of these 2 sports to watch and make bets on, which would it be? WNBA college volleyball, added on Facebook by Boone's Farm, a.k.a. James Jacobson, WWE wrestling. Right now, college volleyball gets 82% of the votes, WNBA 12, and WWE wrestling with 6%. On our Twitter feed, at the Sports Carney, it's 80-20 college volleyball.
I'm going to change my answer to WWE. I said volleyball. I'm going to go WWE, women's volleyball, and then the WNBA. But I'd probably be – actually, you know what? As far as actually making money, I think he would be better. We would be better suited to actually probably bet the WNBA. The unfortunate part of that is there would have to be a little bit of viewing of that to just get acclimated to what teams are in what cities and who plays where. Right.
So the Las Vegas Aces are the WNBA champions. Everybody knows that. And they were led by Becky Hammond as head coach. We all knew that. Owned by Mark Davis, Raiders owner. We all knew that.
Right.
And listen, there is going to be a great WNBA season this year with a record 40 games, Chad. So when you think that you can, bone up on your WNBA this year, you're going to have even more opportunities to do so. So
what's interesting about that? What's interesting about that is Mark Davis does have a haircut similar to a women's softball player without offending anybody. So he actually fits right in. That makes sense that he owns the WNBA.
I thought so too. And it might be the closest the Raiders get to winning a championship by having Mark Davis own.
Hey, they won they won yesterday. Give them a break. Okay.
They did. And they've won 3 games in a row. Davante Adams, for Packer fans that, still lament the loss of Davante Adams. Boy, this guy, he had himself a day. 8 catches, 177 yards, and a couple of scores for Davante. Raiders now, and this is so bad to say, the Raiders are now actually record-wise better than the Packers. They're 5-7. The Detroit Lions, who beat the stuffing out of Jacksonville yesterday, 40 to whatever it was, they're by record better than the Green Bay Packers at 5-7. And remember when the Raiders were the worst team in the whole world, and we talked about that just a few weeks ago, the worst team ever. Davante Adams is probably close to suicide watch for leaving Green Bay. And it turns out now, record-wise, they're better than the Packers. However, the Packers did get win 787 yesterday versus their arch rivals, the Chicago Bears. I know that made Matty Ice happy. I'm curious to see what Green and Gold insider Joe Daguanno's take was, however, because beating the Bears, Chad, and I don't know if Joe heard this earlier, but beating the Bears, Chad actually compared to winning the smallest dick contest. So we'll see where Joe lies on that.
It doesn't matter, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, no, I get it. And that was, again, I just want to keep saying it because it was really funny. So we'll get Joe Daguanno's take on the Green Bay Packers, the victory they had yesterday. Christian Watson is popping. Aaron Rodgers did just enough in the fourth quarter. Green Bay moves to 5-8. Hey, you're telling me there's still a chance? There might be. Stay tuned. Sports Carnival coming back in just a few. The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest mortgage team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest mortgage team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, this is the one and only Sports Carnival. Whatever you do, always give 100%. Unless you're donating blood, then you might want to hold back. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, baby. I've heard that if you give blood like regularly, like you start having less blood to give too. Like you can only give blood at such a clip for so long, and then your body actually starts making less blood for you to give. Is that true?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. I'm not sure.
I don't know that for sure.
Well, you're Dr. Forrester. I figured I would start off with you right there. Speaking of doctors, this guy is a doctor of love. We know that. He's a doctor of Packer science, and he's actually our Mad Dog of Madison. Joe Daguanno joining us from, Joe, where are you today?
I am in lovely Eau Claire.
Nice.
I got to do this real quick because I loaded up the Don Draper Mad Men bar.
Wow. Look at that.
So there you go. So I actually made sure yesterday I came up a little bit early, had my Eau Claire Memorial football banquet last night. So end of the year football banquet, and came in early and loaded up the Don Draper bar. So, and if you and I've gone completely Draper in this office. So I've got old school chairs and everything. So yeah, it's there's a cool vibe going on. I guess not to pat myself on the back, but most places where I am, there's a cool vibe. So you know that's just you know, it is what it is.
Listen, there's objective and subjective realities. That's an objective reality. And it's funny, Kyle Wood, Morning Wood, has called you male model, Joe Daguanno, occasion or two. Joe Daguanno, male model. Joe, let's get the good, the bad, and the ugly from you, seeing as how you're a male model. On yesterday's Packer win over the Bears, 28-19. Packers didn't look good, man, for most of the game. First three quarters, they were struggling. And Chicago was giving them what for? Justin Fields looked pretty good. Fourth quarter, though, Aaron Charles Rodgers and Christian Watson, along with Jair Alexander, they sort of popped here, Joe. I know the Packers aren't mathematically eliminated. They're 5-8 now. But what did you think was good? What was bad? What was ugly for you yesterday in that game?
All right, this is not a playoff team. I just want to get that out right now. I don't care what math says. This is not a playoff team. And we talked a couple of weeks ago that, you know, LaFleur's got to keep the locker room, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was a big win from that standpoint. And you look at a couple of things. Jair Alexander, highest paid cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah,
he looked horrible in the first half of that game. I mean, again, I don't know if he's guessing. I don't know if it's the scheme. He just looked horrible. And so for him to bounce back in the fourth quarter with a big interception, and of course, that was it wasn't quite the dagger because Christian Watson's touchdown run was the dagger, but that was huge. And that's just something you haven't seen from this team. Big time players who they're paying a lot of money to make plays. And so, you know, that first half was the ugly. It was ugly all the way around as far as both teams go. And again, I still question whether or not the defense has quit a little bit on Joe Barry, because you look at Jair Alexander, when you have so many players regressing on the defensive side of the ball like they do, that does go to coaching. And when you've got a defensive coordinator who doesn't have answers, that goes to coaching. So I get it. MLF doesn't want to make any moves during the season, but I think he's got to do something quickly after the season because Joe Barry's not the answer. He's just not the answer. Christian Watson, I mean, I got to tell you right now, speed, you can't coach it. You can't teach it. You can't train it. Speed changes everything. And you look at a guy right now that is playing with so much confidence. And I'm not calling him the next Randy Moss, but his size-speed ratio and the way he strides, it is very reminiscent of Randy Moss. And again, Randy Moss going to a smaller school, Marshall, obviously Christian Watson going to a smaller school with North Dakota State. So a lot of positives to take away from it. I saw one of your Facebook users said that Aaron Charles Rogers reminded him of Shane Falco.
Yeah.
And I thought that was
just a replacement.
First of all, I think Shane Falco, I put him up there with Matt Saracen from Friday Night Lights as my favorite non-real quarterbacks out there.
Yeah.
So, you know, because they're I mean, Scott Bakula was just, it's like, dude, really? You're 80 years old and you're going back to college? So, you know, it was good to have Green Bay win this. And Chad, I heard beating the Bears doesn't mean anything, but I heard James Jones on the pregame show. And James Jones was talking about, look, the best rivalry, it's not Minnesota. And this is from a former player of the Green Bay Packers. He said it's still the Bears. The hatred, the animosity, everything there, it still means something. And again, I'm a Packer guy who lived through the 70s and 80s. And you didn't give a fuck about the record unless you beat the Bears that year. And it means something. And when you look at this rivalry and you look at the all-time winningest franchise, and also I thought it was good too, Aaron Jones eclipses the 5,000-yard mark, and he joins John Brockington, Amon Green, and Jimmy Taylor in that category. So there were a lot of things to take away from yesterday's game when you look at the history of the Green Bay Packers. Again, this is not a playoff team. They're dead. They're dead in the water, but it was a good win, and that's how you got to take this thing.
Yeah, but I can't say all of that in a joke. So that's what that comes down to, Joe. That's a lot of
in other words, it's really not about intelligent sports talk. It's about laying the jokes out there at the proper time.
Have you been watching? I have no intelligence when it comes to sports. All I have is
Oh, God. Joe, listen, Jason P1 Breacher, though, he kind of echoes what your sentiment was here against the Bears and said this was both the Packers and the Bears Super Bowl. Good morning to you as well, Breach. Listen, we've talked about this, and we've adjudicated this Packers case for the last 13 weeks. They're not a good football team right now, but there are good pieces on this football team that need to be coached up or whatever, given an opportunity to shine so that we can see as a team and as a fan base what it is they have. Christian Watson, somebody that, again, we've talked about since the very beginning of the season, who, in my estimation, was way underutilized even that first game. Keep going to this kid. You just got to keep going to him. Because when you see what he's already done in the last 5-6 weeks, you understand why the Packers drafted him where they did. You understand what that whole thing was about when they picked this dude up. So I'm glad to see some of this coming along. I think that Jair, to go back to this Jair point, he's had an off season mentally and on the field. Yep. I feel like the game against, maybe it was right before the Jets game, so were they playing the Giants? And Jair was in the locker room and said, if we don't beat the Jets, we've got a real problem. And then there was animosity between Rodgers and Jair, at least a little bit, seemingly, with Rodgers taking exception to that. I just wonder if Jair has had a season in which he has not been mentally engaged. You look at some of the penalties, Joe, that Jair has given up. There was one game in particular a few weeks back, and I don't recall who it was. It wasn't Dallas, but Jair was just unexceptional in every way and exceptionally bad in certain ways. But he still is one of the top defensive backs in the entire league. So you hope that next year it gets better. I'm almost looking at it like this for the Packers. Matt LaFleur is a good coach, I guess. He knows how to coach offense. You almost need a Brian Flores or some sort of associate coach to come in to this team, take over a defense, and be what, Wade Phillips was to Sean McVay early. Be that guy that can give you, this young up-and-coming offensive wonderkind, the kind of structure, stability, and let's just call it what it is, manliness that it takes to run an NFL team. And I'm not trying to be a misogynist, but we've all been around football teams. The bigger they get, from high school to college to the NFL, you need bigger and bigger personalities to take on those teams because there's a lot of guys on those teams. I just don't know if LaFleur's perfectly cut out to do this in a changing Packers world in which he's going to be dealt with a lot of different kinds of challenges.
Yeah, no doubt. And real quick, you talk about the pieces on this football team, and Des Bryant tweeted out after the game last night that, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, the Packers are going to be in good hands as far as the receiving core. And so, and I thought Zach Tom stepped in admirably at left tackle when I started watching the film last night. So you're pulling some pieces out of this, but let's talk about that coaching staff. And you and I think, talked about Flores a few weeks ago. And the job of a head coach, it's so much different than the job of a coordinator. And you've got to have a global perspective. And there was a Twitter poll put up by, and again, I coach high school football and I follow a lot of coaches. And there was a Twitter poll out there. Is it harder to go from position coach to coordinator than it is to go to coordinator to head coach? The hardest move is going coordinator to head coach. And I think Matt LaFleur was really taken with the interview. And he wanted that Vic Fangio defense. And so he loved what he saw in Joe Barry. But just like when you're drafting a kid, you get so stuck on the combine that you forget to look at the results. And I think that's what Matt LaFleur did. And I agree with you. I think he needs to get someone with balls on that defensive side of the ball who is going to who will demand respect from his players. And I don't think Joe Barry, and I think this is the Jair thing, I don't think it has anything to do with any player or teammate. I think Jair says, I'm not buying what Joe Barry's selling. And so when you've got a strong personality like Jair is, and you've got a guy that you spent money, and this is where I started seeing cracks between front office and coaching staff, because it was in that defensive secondary. Because Darnell Savage, from what I understand, the personnel department would like to see him in the slot, whereas the coaches want to continue to roll him out there at safety. It's the same thing when you give Jair Alexander $84 million and his strength is press coverage, and you see him playing 11 fucking yards off. I mean, there's a disconnect there. So I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect. I think Jair's problem is with Joe Barry. I think Devondre Campbell's his regression. I think it's Joe Barry. I think it's this scheme. And again, I was shocked there wasn't a firing last week, and I still kind of hold LaFleur accountable on that because I think there should have been. And still, another game, guys, where Joe Barry's defense gave up 400-plus yards. And how many more games are you going to see? And you're going to roll this same crap out there, and you see the same problems over and over. I had to laugh when Santo missed the field goal, and they showed Joe Barry on the sidelines jumping up and down. I laughed because that's like a defensive back who's trailing 7 yards behind the receiver, and the receiver drops the ball, and the DB gets all crazy. It's like Joe Barry had nothing to do with that because it was horrible to get in that position in the first place. So, again, and I've said this, celebrate the victory. A lot of things, Packer history-wise, and a lot of things also looking at the future when you see guys like Watson and this type of thing out there. And I talked at my football banquet last night with Eau Claire Memorial here, and they asked me, it's like, is Rodgers coming back? Because he did the salute to Barrett. I said, yes, he's coming back. There's no question in my mind that he is coming back. He is coming back. And you know what? He's probably even more excited when he sees Christian Watson and these types of things, because he's like, hey, I got some legitimate weapons next year. But I think I think 2023 is the swan song. And I think they do make the move with Jordan Love. I think it's the swan song for Aaron Rodgers next year. And I think 2023, it's going to be one more time, even though they're going to be in fucking cap hell till, I'm 80 years old and changing diapers.
So, Joe, they have a bye week, and then they come back. They play the Rams on Monday night, or we can continue to see Aaron Rodgers play football.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question. Aaron Rodgers will be the starting quarterback against the Rams. There's no question. And at that point, and again, this Ram team, I mean, I don't know if Matt Stafford ever plays another down of football. He's not this year because he's on IR now.
Yeah.
So they will not bring him back for week 17.
You think he's done? You think Stafford's done now?
It wouldn't surprise me if he said after this year, you know what? I'm good, guys. It would not surprise me.
Yeah.
You know,
so, and that's the changing face of the NFL. Russ Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Tom Brady. Over the next 2 to 3 years, they're all going to be out. I throw Matt Ryan in there. And so they're all going to be out of the NFL, and it's going to be this new era of quarterbacks coming in. And so it's again, good Packer win. It's a Packer victory Monday. We'll take it. This is not a good football team. It's not a playoff team. You got to look at the individuals on the team and say, where can you build from here?
Yeah, Joe, we'll leave you with this. If Aaron just would have showed up, for any part of the offseason, he might have understood that Christian Watson's a pretty good football player. But hey, we've got 13 weeks in the NFL season. We can get some trust built now. As always, man, we appreciate all your insight. Thank you so much for joining us from Eau Claire. I love that Eau Claire Memorial poster behind you there.
Yeah, but hang on. Also, this is sponsoring my segment today.
I love this. Sponsoring your segment, our good friends over at Jameson Irish Whiskey, who just gave away a pair of Bucks tickets. Mike Garcia from Land Home Financial actually won those. Joe, have a great rest of your Monday, man. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Go Pack Go, and we'll catch up soon, bud.
All right, boys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Joe.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
Coming to the Discovery Channel this fall, living with a Confederate.
Hi, my name is Travis Tay. A lot of folks around here call me Tay-Tay. Yeah, I share a house with my second cousin. Name's Chandler. He's what some folks around here call eccentric.
Why, hello there. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Chandler Worthington III, and I must admit, them Northerners, they get under my skin, make me hot under the collar, with all that Northern aggression and everything. I always say, you boys just keep your Yankee Doodles out of my sweet potato pie. At least for now, anyway. That's my little joke. I mean, stars and bars may fill my heart, but hopefully, a chiseled chin and a barreled chest fills my loins.
See what I'm saying? I gotta deal with that 24/7.
I'm getting the vapors just thinking about them Northerners coming down here on their big old steeds.
Confederate.
Yeah.
Back to the action live from the Trauma Center Studios. This is the Sports Carnival. Efficiency is just a highly developed form of laziness. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Oh, buddy, you're firing on all cylinders today. I don't care if you know anything about sports. You keep doing what you're doing. Eric from La Crescent knows enough, though. He's like, morning, fellas. Due to skull, buddy. These are our Viking fans after another close win, giving up 500 yards. Won't cut it in the playoffs, but hey, congrats to Green Bay. You beat the Bears. Golf clap. That's Eric from La Crescent, big-time Bucks fan, also tangent Minnesota Timberwolves fan, and, of course, a fan of the Vikings. The Vikings win again. They clinched the division yesterday.
Yeah, I watched that game, and they did the old bend but not break defense. Their red zone defense was amazing. Their defense in between the red zone, horrible. But that was kind of by design. They had quite a few goal line stands there, and it was quite impressive in that way. If you look at the stats or the box score afterwards, you're like, Jesus, that was what the hell is going on there? But
Mike White played
strategy
good.
Worked.
Mike White played good in the second half, man. He played bad enough in the first half to keep the Jets out of it, but he played good enough in the second half. I think, not you, but Joe Daguanno just mentioned that he could see Matt Stafford having already played his last down of NFL football. I don't know that Zach Wilson ever makes a return for the Jets. Like if Mike White's able to not throw 2 interceptions during that game, I mean, he threw the ball 51 times yesterday, became just like, I think the 4th Jets quarterback in the last 800 years to have 2 consecutive 300-yard passing games or more in a single season. But if they can play okay with Mike White not being, somebody that loses them a game, the Jets will be fine. For the Minnesota Viking fans, though, here's the deal. You should be forget the numbers because Chad's right. You look at the numbers, you're like, oh, God, that's giving up a ton. the Vikings are they're like undefeated in one-score games, right? The Vikings are now 10-2 on the season. But if you look at the games that they have won and they win them close, that's kind of what you want. You don't need to blow everybody out every single game, but you have to win. And winning the close games, those are the ones that really kind of tell the tale of your season. And I don't think if you're a Vikings fan, you have to look too much further than the game against Buffalo as evidence that this Vikings team, while they've got a bend, maybe not break defensive attitude, when the chips are down, they seem to come up pretty clutch. And then Justin Jefferson, this guy is, we talk about Randy Moss and Christian Watson. Joe Daguanno mentioned that stride. Listen, Justin Jefferson right now, and I know people love Jamar Chase. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. Like him and Devontae Adams, 1 and 2 or 1 and 1A in my estimation. And I think I like Jefferson a shade more because he's taller than Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I think Justin Jefferson's having skill set alone. I think you're right. 1A, 1B, whatever. But as far as the season goes, I would have to give it to Justin Jefferson, mainly not just because of his individual play, but also the team play as well.
Yeah.
And he's definitely a legitimate argument for MVP, which is very, very rare for anybody outside of the quarterback running back to win MVP. That doesn't happen very often. And so that would be huge. I don't know if he will win it, but he's having a hell of a season. And I don't know if this Minnesota team's style of play and Kirk Cousins being a quarterback necessarily translate to them going deep into the playoffs. Let's be honest. But I do think that they are going to put up and they already are, a great season as far as their record goes.
Yeah, they're going to put up a great regular season. In the postseason, what I started to see yesterday was, and now that we're in December, like we have December football, these games start to mean a whole lot more and start to really change in complexity and contrast. What I saw yesterday was this. The Philadelphia Eagles, you want to separate the wheat from the chaff? They are the wheat right now. The Philadelphia Eagles are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. It's almost impossible to stop their running game. Their power back is their quarterback. And then they've got a couple of other running backs that also work really well. And Jalen Hurts is one of these guys that I'm just going to continuously be surprised by. He has turned into a legitimate quarterback. He can fling it. He can run it. He understands defense. The Eagles separated in my estimation. And then in the AFC, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals have now beaten the Kansas City Chiefs 3 times in a calendar year. Yeah. They've beaten these guys 3 times in a year. And think about this. As much as we anoint guys like Patrick Mahomes, the next Michael Jordan, right, of the NFL, which maybe he is by skill set, Michael Jordan did not have anybody in his prime after he vanquished the Magic, the Larry, the Isaiah. Michael didn't have anybody in his prime that he couldn't beat. Like that seems to be where Joe Burrow is right now compared to Patrick Mahomes. He's like one of those guys Mahomes just can't seem to beat. And when you watch what Joe Burrow did down the stretch of that game, you understand why he is, and I think aptly named Joe Cool, because that guy has got a cool demeanor, and he was just taking whatever the defense gave him. They were rushing at him, dump it off to the running back, rushing at him, dumping off to the running back. The third down play in the fourth quarter with a minute and change left, it was 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, that just needed to be made. Joe Burrow put that ball into a window that, listen, one of 5 quarterbacks have probably ever been able to throw it into. Aaron Rodgers being one, Dan Marino maybe being 2. Maybe you go Montana and Elway. There aren't many guys that make that throw that Joe Burrow made yesterday in the fourth quarter with a third down play that just needed to be converted. So yeah.
You say Eagles over Cowboys in the NFC, and you say, are you saying Bengals right now over everybody in the AFC,
over everybody else? Yeah. Yes, I am. I am saying that because I do believe that the Bengals are a team that travels well. We don't talk about their defense a lot. The Bengals defense is ferocious. It's legit. The offensive line, which is always going to be something you have to look at, is getting better as the season progresses on, right? Like they drafted some kids in this last year. The offensive line's getting better for Cincinnati. But yeah, I saw yesterday the separation in the NFC, the Eagles really putting themselves in a different category because they beat a Tennessee team that we just saw beat the Packers. We've seen Tennessee have, close run-ins with the Kansas City Chiefs, even without their quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. The Eagles are legit. And then the AFC, I just look at Joe Burrow and that Cincinnati team, and I'm like, man, they just got Jamar Chase back. Joe Mixon wasn't even playing yesterday. Samaje Perine ended up taking a bulk of those carries. I would be really concerned to the AFC if I was anybody, and especially now that Baltimore has lost Lamar Jackson, right? We don't know if he's out for the season.
Couple weeks, it sounds like, possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think he'll be back. Maybe. I mean, it's amazing that they ended up winning that game after that. And then, is it 2 weeks? Is it, it's a sprained knee. So that could vary, I guess. and they're probably going to play that close to the vest as they're going to pull a Bill Belichick on that. But I would imagine we see him by the end of the season.
I would hope so. If you're a Ravens fan, you really want to see him. The Ravens, again, eke out a victory 10-9 over the Denver Broncos. And Chad, Denver with Russell Wilson, this is just awful. And you look at the Seahawks, and I know that they were playing a Rams team that was with their backup quarterback, but you look at the Seahawks and the way that Geno Smith is playing, and you look at the way that Russell Wilson's playing, and I really never thought that I would ask myself this question, but was Pete Carroll like almost 100% of the reason that Russell Wilson was that good? Because he did fall to the third round for a reason, but Pete Carroll's scheme has taken Geno Smith and elevating this guy. He looks like he's an all-pro quarterback almost right now.
Being in the Northwest, when that move happened, obviously there was a lot of consternation around here. A lot of people just didn't really, they were scratching their head. Is this a good move? Oh my God. What are they going to do? We need somebody. We need to go pick up, Jackass from what's the guy's name? I can't think of his name. It's on all the TV commercials, and now he plays for Carolina.
Cam Newton. Sure.
No, not Cam Newton. But it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
There was a bunch of talk about
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield. A bunch of talk about that. We need to bring him in. Geno's not good enough. And then look at the season that Geno has put in. It's been pretty amazing. And that question isn't a bad question. Obviously, Pete Carroll is one of these kind of Tony Robbins kind of coaches, a motivator, sure. Right? And I think that he builds guys up. Clearly, that's been translated over to Geno. And obviously, it had an impact on Russell. And this transition has not been good. And it looks like he is way past his prime. And at this point, I think he's lost the locker room to some degree with the Broncos. And they just can't beat anybody. It's really kind of a head scratcher, honestly.
Well, when you look at how the Broncos were constructed, nobody thought they would be this bad. I mean, I put a little future bet on the Broncos to win the AFC West this year because I thought, I did. This was a long time ago. It's not going to age well, but I got some good odds on it. I thought the way the Broncos were constructed, they had good defense. They had, Bradley Chubb. You've got some of these guys that are really, really good. Russell Wilson, to me, has always been a top quarterback, and so it was a surprise. Listen, before we get out of here, because I feel like we've just got so much that we can't run down, will you bring up that college football playoff slide that we've got? Because while you do that, Chad, I want to make another announcement. Last week, we talked about our new partnership with BetUS. Use the promo code CARNIVAL. When you go to join, they'll ask you, how did you hear about us? Put in, podcast or other, and then type in the word CARNIVAL to claim your 125% deposit match. We get some credit for that too. So it does help the show. So we announced that last week, but we've also got another big announcement this week. Starting on Thursday on ESPN 105.5 right here in the Cooley region, you're going to start to hear Uncle Dave's Daily Play with a nod towards BetUS as some of the odds that you can find on BetUS. And then next Thursday, we don't know exactly what time this is going to be, but next Thursday, with John Papadopoulos on ESPN 105.5 in the afternoons. He's on from 3 to 6 p.m. I will be joining John every single Thursday as a sports betting expert, Chad, here in the Cooley region. So we're really excited. The new partnership with ESPN 105.5 is just coming aboard or just coming around right now. But every Thursday, starting next Thursday, I'll be on with John Papadopoulos in the afternoons. We'll be talking some betting and getting our audience members and new audience members lined up for whatever the weekend has in store for us. And this will go year round. So we're talking baseball, we're talking hockey, we're talking football, basketball, all the good stuff.
I'm no expert, but I did call that Utah game. Utah over USC.
Did.
I did call that game. And that was an amazing game. I watched that whole game. I watched the TCU Kansas State game. I still don't know why they ran the same play back-to-back at the goal line there. I don't know why they didn't scramble a little bit, maybe run a naked boot, but whatever. Ohio State is now in, so now you got Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State.
Yep.
I love the Final Four. I think this is great. So I think it's Ohio State versus Georgia, and then Michigan, TCU. I think TCU is going to have a really hard time against Michigan.
TCU is going to get blown the fuck out against Michigan.
And Georgia's going to kill Ohio State.
Georgia's going to kill Ohio State. This is where Nick Saban, and I know that I'm not a Nick Saban guy either for the most part. This is where Nick Saban, though, is probably right when he makes a pitch to the college football playoff committee. Like, dude, our losses are better than some of their wins. And I know that you don't get in by good losses, but Alabama would probably beat Ohio State, TCU, and give Michigan a really good run for their money. I do think Alabama loses to Georgia once again, but I think Alabama would beat these other three teams like pretty handily.
Yeah. There is a separator there. I do think Georgia has a good shot against Michigan, though. Michigan has a good shot against Georgia. I think that the only thing is with Blake Corum out, that I don't know if he'll be back by then. I'm not sure. I haven't really kept up on that, but that's what I'm hoping for. I hope Michigan actually does beat Georgia. But we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, we will. John Harbaugh, I mean, you want to talk about a legacy-defining sort of a playoff. If he's able to get himself a national championship, Jim, I said John, this would be a legacy-defining thing for Jim, not to be confused with John Harbaugh. Speaking of no confusion, Chad, college volleyball is dominating this morning's poll question at the Sports Carney on both Facebook and Twitter. When you're asked, what would you rather watch, the WNBA or college volleyball? It's not even close, 83-17, and 80-20 on the other stuff. This has been fun today, man.
Yeah, not bad.
Have a good day, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 8 o'clock here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting from the Toronto Center studios.